Hi guys! This video is a continuation of my last Happy Lady video. Because it's a unique story all in itself, I felt that it needed to be its own video. Hope you enjoy. It started with this image right here. I was doing family history several months ago, and I came across a man who was not in my family tree. But as I read his article and his obituary in the newspaper, I couldn't help but feel the need to upload that to his record on Family Search. I felt that surely somebody out there someday would want to know this information about their ancestor. So I took a screenshot of his picture and took a screenshot of his obituary and entered all of this information into his record. In fact, he didn't even have a record in the tree, so I created one for him. Well, while doing this, I began to add branches onto his tree because the obituary mentioned his family members. And of course, they were not in the tree. So I added them, and of course, this continued because then I found their family members and their family members. And finally, I had to put this project on pause. Well, I got back to it recently last week when I decided it was finally time to close down all of these windows on my screen. And as I was revisiting these people and their stories, I realized that they didn't have any descendants. They never went on to marry and have children. There was no posterity looking for them. That's why they had no records in the tree. This pulled at my heartstrings because as I read their stories and their obituaries, they sounded like amazing people who did amazing things for this country. And it was sad to me that they never left behind that legacy. There were no descendants, nobody knowing about their story, knowing that they existed. And I felt this sadness. So I took it upon myself to learn more about their family and to build it into a tree. So I did this, and as I did this, I continued learning more about how amazing this family is. I continued finding more family members who also didn't marry and have children. Soon I was finding their yearbooks from as far back as the late 1800s and reading about all of their contributions to education, to their communities, and it was incredible. I began to learn that this family from New York had immigrated from Ireland. Well, I have ancestors who immigrated from Ireland. So I began to study the origins of their name, Reidy, R-E-I-D-Y. Well, I felt compelled to do their work in the temple. After all, if there were no descendants looking for them, who was going to do their work? I knew that I needed to do this, but I also knew that I would feel much better about it if I could find a common ancestor to show that we are indeed related. And there he was in the history of the origins of the Reidy family surname. There is an ancestor who was the legendary king Oil Olam of Munster during the 3rd century. If I could find this legendary king in my tree, that would be my link to this family. In my search, I read more about their clan and more about their heritage, and this was fascinating to me because during this same week, I entered my DNA results into a website that shows you the ancient civilizations, tribes, and clans that you're connected to through your DNA, and there were a lot of Scottish clans, so this had my interest. I began reading about these Scottish Highlanders who came from Scotland in the mid-1700s to America, and they had something in common with the Native Americans here on this land. They both, according to this painting, served an empire that cared for neither. In fact, when asked the question, "What race of people do you believe make the best soldiers?" General Robert E. Lee was quoted as saying, "The Scots, who came to this country by way of Ireland, because they have all the dash of the Irish in taking up a position, and all the stubbornness of the Scots in holding it. These were tough people who were used to hardship. They asked for nothing from the government or anyone else, and nothing is what they usually received. They began to rely on hunting in order to obtain food and clothing. So as they began to wear animal skins and becoming highly adaptable to the terrain, they took on the style, dress, and appearance of the Native Americans. And after only a year on the frontier, they blended right in. In fact, throughout the French and Indian War, English authorities negotiated with the Native Americans for their military assistance. The English did experience some success, partly due to the influence of the Scottish Highlanders, whom the Indians viewed as being similar to themselves. Both cultures were consummate warriors and lovers of the fray. Both had great respect for each other and for the orator and chieftain. And both clan and tribe held ancient traditions in high regard. Their similarities in temperament and philosophy sometimes led the English to refer to the Scots as cousins to the Indian. Preparing for battle had its own Highland custom, the war dance. On the left, Robert Griffing shows a soldier of the 42nd Highland Regiment within the walls of Fort Ticonderoga, seeking a prophecy by engaging in an ancient Highland tradition. According to clan tradition, if the dancer touches the swords beneath his feet during the dance, it's a forecast of doom for the coming battle. A piper provides the tunes. An Iroquois warrior watches, waiting for the results. Now, in my video, The People of the North, I talk all about this connection to Native American tribes and their origins back to tribes and clans on the other side of the ocean. So this had my interest. In fact, while I was doing that DNA research on my own clans and tribes whom I'm related to, here's that pay attention number 144 that popped up on this website called mytrueancestry.com. 144 plus ancient civilizations. There it was again that same day while printing a book that I made, a photo album of my family history for 2023. It happened to be 441 pages. That same day, while making a post about my kids, there was that number again. Right when I posted it, it was 11:44 p.m. This number, 144, is a constant reminder of the importance of the gathering of Israel. And this has to do with our families, with our children, all of these things that we do to preserve our stories and our history. These are all a part of the gathering on both sides of the veil. It seemed that every text I sent out or received during this week relating to anything that had to do with my family or my children or families in the community, there was that number 144, a continual reminder. Here it is again while studying about the seven-headed dragon for these videos. There's that number 144. And while putting together a karaoke list of music for a gathering event I was over at the high school in which I was gathering the student body and faculty together to sing songs, there was that number for one of the karaoke songs, 144. And it didn't stop there. The day that I took these names of this family to the temple was the day I saw this number everywhere, reminding me the importance of getting that work done. In fact, anytime a distraction popped up in my path, whether it was a notification, an alert, a news article, a YouTube video, a text message from someone pointing me in some direction, there was always that number 144, reminding me not to go down all of these rabbit holes of all of these things going on right now in the world all around me, but to focus on this important work. In fact, when I came home from the temple that morning, I posted a little bit about that experience on social media. That night, when I went back on to respond to replies, there was that pay attention number again. It happened to be 11:44 p.m. when I clicked on this post. Again, it was a witness, a confirmation to the importance of this work, which is the gathering of Israel. Now back to this website where I uploaded my DNA results. It's called mytrueancestry.com, and I happened to stumble across it during this research. There was that pay attention number 144. And here are my results. The clan that showed up strongest in my DNA is the Armstrong clan. In fact, after discovering these results, I started to see that name show up in my tree. Here's a map of where the clan is located at the bottom of Scotland. And on the clan crest, you'll see a strong arm. This name comes from the very first Armstrong of the clan, who was named Seward Byrne, in other words, sword warrior. And here is the clan tartan. This is interesting to me because I have always been drawn to these colors. I once owned a plaid shirt several years ago that was this exact pattern and these colors. It was my favorite. Coming in at second place in my DNA results is the House of Lippe-Detmold. Lippe was a state in Germany that originated as a state during the Holy Roman Empire. It was ruled by the Royal House of Lippe, which includes families such as Prince Leopold IV. And coming in at third place in my DNA results is the clan Donachide. Circled in red on the map of Scotland is where this clan was located, and I had to chuckle because in green is my name and the name of my brother. This was the first time that I was aware that there was a Lindsay clan and a Cameron clan of Scotland. Apparently, Clan Robertson is correctly known as Clan Donachide. The principal surnames of this clan are Robertson, Duncan, and Ride. There it was, a clue to the Ridey family, the family that I've been trying to find a connection to. And it is spelled R-E-I-D. I knew I was getting closer. The crest badge of a right hand upholding an imperial crown was awarded to the clan by King James II. He rewarded it to the clan for capturing his father's assassins. In fact, eventually on the list, I am related to the Paisley clan. Now, as much as I researched it, I could not find the story behind the original crest, which shows a hand holding a dagger and says, "Be sure." So it has me wondering, be sure about what? If you happen to know the history behind this symbol, please comment down below. Here is another crest that bears the name of the Paisley clan. And again, I could not find the history or the story behind this crest. Well, my daughter got a kick out of knowing that there is a Scottish clan that bears her name. And because she wants to be a fashion designer, I told her that she should definitely make something with the same plaid of the Paisley clan. So here's a map again of the Scottish clans, and circled in purple is where the Paisley clan is from. As I was researching the history and etymology of the Scottish tartan, I came across my name again. Apparently, the word tartan comes from the French word tartane, meaning linsey woolsey, which is a coarse twill or plain woven fabric that actually Jews were forbidden to wear as it was a law in the Torah. As I looked through the rest of the list of the clans that I'm closest related to based on my DNA, a lot of names stood out to me. There is Belgian royalty, Bulgarian royalty, Portuguese royalty, and then I began to see names that show up quite a bit in my family tree, such as the surname Grey, and there is the House of Grey. But there was a certain name that stood out to me, and that is the Clan Cheyne, spelled C-H-E-Y-N-E. Well, that reminded me of a certain tribe in North America called the Cheyenne. But before we get into that, I looked up the word Cheyne and I learned that it's both a first given name and a surname from Scotland, and it means oak tree. I have done a lot of videos about the symbolism of the word oak tree that shows up in ancient texts, cultures, and stories. The oak tree was always sacred. And when I look at the Cheney name, I can't help but think of the name Cheyenne. The name Cheyenne means people of a different language. It also means the red speakers, and this referred to the Native American tribe of the Great Plains who spoke a different language than the other tribes living there. And when I hear the names Cheney and Cheyenne, I can't help but think of the name Chin. The word Chin means bright, beautiful, and gold. The origin is Chinese, and it's the Qin dynasty whom the nation of China is named after. The word Chin also shows up in Irish surnames. So here are some different family crests, and the gold one with the lion standing on his hind legs, that is the Chin family crest. I find it very interesting that it looks just like the lion on the flag of Scotland. Scotland is where the Cheney clan comes from. I also find it very interesting that the flag of Scotland very much resembles the flag of the Cheyenne tribe. The symbol on the Cheyenne flag represents the morning star, and if you remember from past videos that I've made, the morning star is a symbol of Jesus Christ. The symbol on the flag of Scotland is the cross. It's a Christian symbol, the cross of St. Andrew shaped like an X. Another well-known symbol of Jesus Christ is the Lion of Judah, which is a beacon of light, courage, bravery, and dignity. In the book of Revelation, Jesus is referred to as the Lion of Judah. And speaking of Judah, here is a flag of the nation of Israel. Here again, we have the blue and the white. And in the center is the Star of David, another symbol of Judah, or the Jewish nation. It is also called the Shield of David. Now, lions also represent the royal bloodline of King David. So we have the Shield of David on the flag of Israel, and then we have the Shield of Scotland, which also has a lion. And then we have the Chin family crest, which also has this same lion on it. Right as I was editing this part of the video, I came across this image right here on my phone. Check it out, 144, pay attention. That 144 always symbolizes the gathering of Israel, the 144,000, the 12 tribes. It happened to be an image of Japanese swords. Just seconds later, I see this image right here on my phone. It's a lion standing on his hind legs. And there's my pay attention number 311 that I always see just about every day. To me, it always says pay attention. So I have these two images back to back, Japan and this lion, this symbol of royalty, a royal bloodline. It was in that moment that I realized all of those lines in my family tree where there's the blue flags and the blue shields, I can trace them all back to Japheth. Japheth is one of Noah's sons, and he's said to be the progenitor of European people as well as the Asian people. In fact, it's believed that the name Japan derives from the name Japheth. I find it interesting that one of Japheth's sons is named Javan, spelled Javan. In fact, the ancient Japanese have a creation story which teaches that the gods made a male and female from whom all others on the earth descend. In the book of Genesis, chapter 10, we read about Japheth and his sons, who were Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshech, and Tiras. The sons of Gomer were Ashkenaz, Riphath, and Togarmah, and the sons of Javan were Elisha, Tarshish, Kittim, and Dodanim. Verse 5 in Genesis 10 tells us that from these coastal people, the Gentiles were separated into their lands and continents. In China, along the coast, there was a people called Three Han, H-A-N, by the early Chinese writers. Han may be a derivative of Yavan or Javan or Yahan. The three were Mahan, Shonhan, and the Pianha. It's believed that there is a very close relationship between them and the people who settled Japan. While editing this video, I discovered this line in my family tree to the Han Empire of China. I'm also related to the kings of the Huns, not to be confused with the Hans. The Huns founded the dynastic states of northern China, and they migrated over into Europe and settled into what we know as modern-day Hungary, which bears their name, the Huns. In fact, in a statement in the Chronicles of Japan compiled in 720 AD, it is said that Ninigi, a forefather of the race, had 4 sons, and this may have been Javan, who also had 4 sons. And just as I had made the connection with the name Javan and Japan, others have made that same connection as well. It's also believed that the Japanese people may descend from Ashkenaz, who was a son of Gomer, who was a son of Japheth. As you can see from this screenshot, there are thousands of words and names of places with no real etymological meaning in it in Japanese. Yet they all correspond with Hebrew words. Even the kings have similar names. The first known king of Japan, who was named Osi, ruled around 730 BC. This king has been identified with the last king of Israel, Hoshea, who died around the same time, which happened to be the same time of the Assyrian exile of the 10 tribes from Israel. The Holy Japanese Shinto temple strongly resembles the ancient Holy Israelite temple, which housed a Holy of Holies section and several gates. Several artifacts in Japan have been traced to Assyrian and Jewish sources. Among them, a well in Koryuji with the words "Well of Israel" inscribed on its side. Among the samurai sect, there is a tradition that their ancient ancestors came to Japan from Western Asia around 660 BC. The name samurai resembles Samaria. There are some who claim that the Mikado, the Japanese emperor, is a descendant of the Hebrew tribe of Gad. Mikado recalls the Hebrew word for His Majesty the King, Malchuto. Back to the Qin family crest. Well, I decided to do a Google search for the Qin state flag in China. Check it out. This is the Irrawaddy region, which is a part of the Myanmar region, which is a part of the Qin state. Well, this also reminded me of the Armstrong clan and their shield. The Armstrongs are another clan that are in my DNA, another clan from Scotland. And the Armstrong shield also reminds me of the Grey Shield, which is another clan in Scotland who also shows up in my DNA. In fact, it was following this line in my family tree that led me all the way to the family of Jesus Christ, that royal bloodline of King David. Now, these flags and shields also remind me of the Jewish prayer shawl known as the Talit. The book of Numbers speaks about this prayer shawl. In Numbers chapter 15, verse 39, it says, "It shall be unto you for a fringe, that ye may look upon it, and remember all the commandments of the Lord, and do them, and that ye go not about after your own heart and your own eyes, after which ye used to go astray, that ye may remember and do all my commandments, and be holy unto your God. This reminds me very much of the sacrament prayer, when the priests cover the bread and the water with the white linen cloth, and this prayer shawl is made of white linen. A prayer is said that we may always keep the Lord's commandments, that we may always remember him and have his Spirit to be with us. Now, in the Old Testament of the Bible, God told Moses they needed to use these colors, the blue dye on the white linen. And all throughout different cultures where blue and white are predominant in symbolism, I have seen a common pattern of the blue symbolizing the sky and the sea, as the ocean or the sea reflects the sky, and the sky is a reminder to look up to heaven, to God, and the white represents purity, God's purity, and being made clean by him, through him. The Lord also commanded that this prayer shawl have fringe, and I was reminded of this image right here. These are a pair of leggings from the Cheyenne tribe. They have the blue and white stripes as well as the fringe. Now, the flag of Israel was designed after the tallit, so that's why you have the blue and white on the flag, because you have it on this prayer shawl. Now, this blue and white also reminds me of the flag of Bavaria, which you may recognize on the emblem of the BMW. This flag dates back to the royal house of Wittelsbach, which was a Bavarian dynasty that ruled over territories which included Bavaria, Cologne, Holland, Zealand, Sweden, Denmark, Norway, Hungary, Bohemia, and Greece. And of course, when I read this, I thought of the flag of Greece. Here it is. You have the blue and the white stripes. You also have the cross. And every one of these flags or shields are in my family tree. Thinking of all these blue lines, and especially the Chin people, I'm reminded of the Chin tribe of Myanmar. Looking at the name of where they live, I couldn't help but wonder if there might be some kind of a connection to the Mayan people. I discovered that among the people whom the Mayan of Mexico share their DNA with are the Chinatic or the Chinatican. There's that word China. And also the Chopan or Chopan. Look down there, Choapan, sounds very much like Japan. Though these places are in Mexico, these languages have also been discovered in Staten Island, New York. And speaking of the Chin people, when I think about the word Chin, I'm reminded of this indigenous tribe of Alaska where the women have tattoos of lines on their chins. It is uncertain what these lines represent, as the meanings vary from tribe to tribe. And reflecting on these chin tattoos, I am reminded of this woman, Olive Ann Oatman. Her family had joined the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. However, after the prophet Joseph Smith was martyred, the family split off from the main church and followed a new group of people called the Brewsterites. The Brewsterites declared their modern-day place of gathering to be in Yuma, Arizona. And as they were headed out there with a wagon train, they encountered a native tribe to the area called the Yavapai, where most of the family was beaten to death, all except for her 15-year-old brother Lorenzo and 14-year-old Olive and her 7-year-old sister Marianne. Both sisters were taken as slaves by the Yavapai tribe. During this time, another group of Native Americans known as the Mojave came across these two girls while being held captive by the Yavapai. The The daughter of the chief of the Mojave took pity upon these girls, and she very much felt sorry for them. She made several offers to the chief of the Yavapai until he finally agreed to make a trade for the girls. The Mojave people were a much more prosperous tribe and were able to treat the girls very well. However, later, due to a drought, Olive's younger sister Mary died of starvation. Olive grew to love the Mojave people just as if they were her own family. As rumors spread about a white girl living among the Mojave people, messengers were sent to the tribe requesting her release. Eventually, she chose to comply. It was believed that for years she grieved this forced return because she had been married to a Mojave man and had given birth to 2 boys. Eventually, she co-wrote a book about her story, and it became a bestseller. She went on a public speaking tour where she met her husband, John Brant Fairchild, and they were married on November 9, 1865. Olive was the first known white woman to have tattoos on her face. These blue lines created much curiosity about her and helped her book become a bestseller. I found it interesting that the tribe that kidnapped her was called the Yavapai, Yavapai, which translates to the people of the sun. Well, Yavapai looks very much like the derivative of Yavan or Yahan, which we have connected to Japan. And Japan is the land of the rising sun. In the Yavapai creation story, they speak of the first man and woman on the earth. And the man had the breath of life blown into his mouth 4 times. As soon as he is up and walking, the Creator takes a rib out of the man and makes a woman. The Creator tells the man that he can have anything he wants on the land except for the one tree in the middle, and he must not touch that tree. A snake in a bush eventually convinces the woman to eat the fruit on the tree. He tells her that in doing so, she will be able to see everything. She saves some of the fruit for the man, and after they both eat, they realize they have no clothes on. When God returns, he sees what they have done, and he sends them away from the land where they lived. Back to these blue lines, pondering on the Cheyenne tribe, I noticed something interesting. The Cheyenne come from the Algonquin woodland people of the Great Lakes, and they migrated west in the mid-1600s, where they settled on the Great Plains and were known by the nearby tribes as the people of a different language. As I researched the root words of Algonquin, here's what I found. Al is an Arabic word which simply means the. Now it's interesting because I highlighted it in green to show how it looks so much like the letter J and I, which also shows up in these root words. Al, which is a Paleo-Hebrew form of El, means God. It also means strength, power, and authority. Further down, Gon is Japanese for power, authority, and right, and it's Chinese for to choose. Qin, or Qin in Chinese, is also known as Chin, the surname Qin, the Qin people. It's believed to be a Burmese corruption of the Chinese word Jin, Jin, which means man or people, and Jinn in Arab, Jin, can mean deity, heaven, and Eden. So I broke these words down to create sentences, and what I came up with are the people with authority, the chosen people, and the power of heaven. And it's interesting because the Cheyenne flag and the Cheyenne, who are an Algonquin people, represents heaven, the morning star, and the Cheyenne people are the descendants of the morning star, also known as the Morning Star people. And where we know the morning star is Jesus Christ, you could say the people of Christ. It's fascinating to follow these clues back to the 12 tribes of Israel, and it's interesting to see where they spread across the earth. I descend from the Algonquin tribes of the Great Lakes, so I know I have some Manasseh in my DNA. We know that the Native American tribes descend from the tribe of Manasseh. However, this Manasseh I came across in my tree is not the same Manasseh. This is King Hezekiah's son, who was also king of Judah. As I said before, I can trace most of my lines back to Japheth, one of the sons of Noah. He is said to be the progenitor of the fair-skinned white race of northern Europe, as well as parts of Asia. Well, as you can see in my DNA results, I am related to several Viking tribes, Celtic tribes and gladiators, Scottish clans, and Merovingian nobles, just to name a few. Another group that shows up often in my tree are the Ukrainian Scythians, whom are also said to be descendants of Japheth. I've been able to find kings and royalty from just about every nation in Europe and the Middle East in my tree. Here's one of my many connections to the pharaohs of Egypt through Princess Scoda, whom Scotland was named after. In fact, this is where you can see my Egyptian and Scythian lines come together. Also mixed into my lines are the emperors of Rome, Tunisia, and finally, following this same line in my tree, I reached the person I was looking for, the common ancestor that connected me to the Reedy family, which initially began all of this research. Here is our common ancestor, a High King of Ireland, of Munster. Ailill, Olam, Oilill. El means the true God of Israel, spelled different ways, A-L-E-E-L. And Ale also means elf in Gaelic. I've talked about the origins of the elfin people in a video I put out a year ago. I will have the link down below. And Olam means a learned man of science. This king is connected to the Tuatha De Danann, whom I also talk about in my video of the Elfin people. They are one of the ancient tribes who ruled Ireland from 1897 BC to 1700 BC, at which time legend says they were forced to live in the underworld or underground. I take that to mean they had to go into hiding. This began the myths and the legends of elves being tiny mythical creatures who lived in the woods or underground. The Tuatha De Danann were said to be a race of bright white people. Some referred to them as sons and daughters of the gods. They had the power to heal people and even raise the dead. They were believed to be the first of the Druids. The Druids and the Elfin people, or the Tuatha De Danann, were feared by those who didn't understand their power and where it came from, so they were vilified to be evil pagans as well as mischievous mythical creatures. I talk all about this in my Elfin people video, and I have Druidic kings in my family tree, and they go all the way back to Israel. Well, I believe there is a clue given to us in their name. In Gaelic, Tuatha De means tribe of or people of, and Danum, you have the word Dan, the tribe of Dan. Dananites. Here is the path of migration that the tribe of Dan most likely took based on the clues and markers throughout Europe where we see the name Dan. The most famous Danite was probably Samson. His mission required great physical strength, and the Lord made a covenant with him that as long as he obeyed his commandments, he would be physically strong. He was told to never cut his hair. Samson was a Nazirite, and it was part of the Nazirite vow to refrain from cutting your hair. Samson's hair being cut was symbolic of losing that authority, being cut off from the priesthood of God. The name Dan means judge. The tribe of Dan was associated with judging, and Samson was a judge. So we have a group that went around Carthage, up around Iberia or Spain, and up into Ireland. And we also have a group that went directly up through Italy and straight to Denmark, the Mark of Dan. And then we also have a group that went up around Galatia, still headed in the same direction toward Denmark. And quickly, I'll insert right here, I felt there was a connection between the word Gaelic and Galatia. And it turns out that is true. It says right here that Gaelic has ancient origins in the Celtic language of Galatian. So we have a group who came to the top of Ireland and a group who came to the bottom of Ireland. Along the way, they would have merged with other groups, such as the Philistines. Many people believe that this is what gave birth to the mighty, red-headed, seafaring giant race that made their way to North and South America. Many referred to the Tuatha De Danann as red-headed giants. They were known as tall, red-headed, and blonde, white-skinned people with blue and green eyes. They were also called the Tribe of the Gods. They became the inspiration for the elf race in J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. Just like the native people of North America, the Tuatha De Danann buried their kings in mounds in Ireland. The mound builders of North America are believed to be, by scholars, the ancient Nephites of the Book of Mormon, who were descendants of Manasseh. The Tuatha De Danann were said to have traveled by ship from 4 island cities, in which they brought with them 4 wise men who became the 4 Druid kings, who taught them wisdom and brought with them great treasures from each of those cities. So we have these wise men with treasures. Now again, I've talked about this in my video about the elfin people. And I also brought it up recently in a video where I talked about how the wise men saw a star in the east. So if they followed the star in the east and they were moving in east direction, then they wouldn't have come from the east, such as Asia or India, because if they would have traveled from the east, headed in an eastward direction, they would have traveled all the way around the globe, coming back through the west toward Bethlehem. In fact, originally writers and scholars believed that the wise men came from Persia because that seemed to fit best with Matthew's account. However, scholars now believe that the wise men came from the continents of Europe, Africa, and possibly Asia. The 4 wise men of the Tuatha De Danann were said to have come from these 4 cities: Phalius, Gorias, Phindius, and Mirius. Now the city Phindius or Phineas reminds me of Finland, and the Finns came from the east. They came from Russia and settled in Finland, and they eventually came across the Sami people. Now I talk all about the mysterious Sami people, or the mysterious people of the North, in a video I put out over a year ago, and I will have a link to that video down below. Now the ancient city of Mirius is also known as Laconia or Laconia, which is the coast of Greece. Now Gorius comes from the ancient French word gore, which means a triangular piece of land. It also comes from the name George, which means farmer. Now, I've made a video all about the history of the name George and farmers and how farmers are always the Lord's people. I will have a link to that video down below. I found this medieval drawing of the country of Georgia, and it has a triangle shape. However, the date that the country of Georgia was given the name Georgia doesn't fall in with the timeline of the Tuatha De Danann. It's also believed that the word Georgia comes from this Greek word right here that means tiller of the land. In other words, a farmer. And the city of Phalius is said to be this ancient city right here in Ireland, located in Tara. Here is artwork depicting these 4 cities and the 4 treasures that were brought from them. This is also called the Cross of the 4 Cardinals, or the 4 directions. The scriptures talk about the 4 angels who were assigned over the 4 corners of the earth. And here are the 4 treasures that the Tuatha De Danann brought to Ireland. The first is the Stone of Fal, or Lia Fell, which stands on the hill of Tara. Legend has it that the stone roared 3 times for authentic candidates for coronation. However, this phallic-shaped stone, which bears the resemblance of its name, Lia Fal, has long been the center of controversy, as it's believed that the Stone of Destiny is the very stone that Jacob slept upon when he had his famous dream about the ladder. And it's believed that this stone was moved to Scotland, where it resides to this day as a symbol of Scotland's ancient monarchy. The stone is only moved when it's time for a coronation of a new king or queen, in which it's brought to Westminster Abbey and placed before the throne as part of the new coronation. Next is the Spear of Lugh, which could be the Spear of Odin. This spear was anciently known for always hitting the target of the attacker, regardless of the attacker's skill. This spear was named Gungnir, and it was the spear of Odin. It's believed that the Tuatha De Danann migrated from Scandinavia, which we know is where the tribe of Dan went. I've talked about before the creation stories of the ancient people of the North and the Scandinavians, and it's no different than the creation stories of the different indigenous tribes all around the world. As stories were handed down through history and destroyed by incoming invaders and conquerors, we've lost a lot of the truths in those stories, but I'd like to make another connection that I noticed. So this spear is called the Spear of Lugh, L-U-G-H. Well, this famous and legendary spear of Odin is said to have pierced his son Thor, and it's what killed him. Now here is a Nordic depiction of this spear and of this story, and if you look, you will see the exact symbol that is on the Cheyenne flag, which is known to be the morning star, a symbol of Jesus Christ. Squares symbolize life on earth, and we know that our Savior Jesus Christ, after he was killed, they took a spear and pierced it through his side to make sure that he was dead. However, 3 days later, he was resurrected, guaranteeing eternal life for all mankind spread across all 4 corners of the earth for those who would believe on his name and come unto him and covenant with him to be his. I decided to research the spear that pierced Jesus Christ, and this is known as the Spear of Destiny. It sounds like the Stone of Destiny. It's also called the Holy Lance, or the Lance of Longinus. We know that Longinus converted to Christianity and was eventually martyred because of this. Could there be a possible connection between the Spear of Lugh and the Spear of Longinus? They seem to share the same symbolism. Next on the list is the Sword of Nuada. The sword was also known as the Sword of Light. It sounds very symbolic to the Sword of Truth, the Sword of Truth and Light that we read about in the scriptures. And last is the Cauldron of the Dagda. The Dagda means the Great God. And I've talked about recently in a video I made about Native American histories and creation stories, and there were certain tribes that talk about the great creator coming to visit them and giving them cauldrons and teaching them how to cook in them and make food, in which he also teaches them that those who eat of his bread shall never hunger, and those who drink of his water shall never thirst. According to legend, the great creator or the great god provided the Tuatha De Danann with this cauldron that filled them with endless supplies of food so that they never hungered. These treasures remind me of the Ark of the Covenant, when the Lord has his people carry with them on their journey through the wilderness sacred relics. The Ark of the Covenant was said to have contained a gold pot of manna. That reminds me of the cauldron of food. It also contained the staff of Aaron, which had the budding flower. Aaron's rod was endowed with miraculous power. Kind of reminds me of the spear of destiny. And similar to the stone of destiny, there were the stone tablets, which contained the 10 Commandments, which were the Lord's instruction for the destiny of his people. There was also the gold breastplate known as the breastplate of judgment, worn by Aaron at the temple. It contained the Urim and Thummim, which were stones that allowed Aaron to speak to God. In this depiction, the breastplate projects the word emerald. This reminds me of Ireland, the Emerald Isle. It had me wondering if the stone of destiny of the Tuatha De Danann was actually a seer stone, a Urim and Thummim, revealing their destiny. This appears to be the pattern throughout history and the scriptures with the Lord's people. In the Hill Cumorah in New York, Moroni buried a gold breastplate, a Urim and Thummim, in other words, seer stones, and a record of the Lord's people on the American continent, as well as the sword of Laban, which reminds me of the sword of truth, the sword of light, as well as the Liahona, which is symbolic of the Holy Ghost. It guided them through the wilderness and across the sea to the American continent, the Promised Land. The Ark of the Covenant contained a gold breastplate, which symbolizes the true priesthood, and Moroni buried a gold breastplate. This once belonged to Laban and is a symbol of him losing the priesthood, being cut off. Odin was also said to have worn a gold breastplate along with a shield and sword. Even the Greek god Zeus wore a gold breastplate. You can find similar objects and patterns all throughout different mythologies, legends, and histories. Now back to the Tuatha De Danann. What became of them? Well, they were overtaken by a group of invaders called the Fomorians. Historical records say that they were red-headed giants. However, history paints them as feeble, weak beings who crawled out of the underworld of the sea. Morian could have a connection to the word marine, which means of the sea, and it could also come from the Greek word moron, which means someone who isn't very intelligent, and the word foe often means enemy, so enemies who aren't very intelligent or enemies of the sea. The Fomorians were said to be bringers of chaos, darkness, death, blight, and drought to Ireland. The blight of Ireland eventually triggered another migration where many of the Irish left Ireland, 1/3 of the population to be exact, and went elsewhere. This is known as the greatest island exodus in the history of the world. This most likely is the reason the Wrighty family came to America in the mid-1800s. Now, I've talked about before in past videos Tia Tephi, the daughter of King Zedekiah, and her connection to Ireland. My Irish line goes straight to her, so I enjoyed telling my kids that we are related to the Mulekites in the Book of Mormon. Mulek was a son of King Zedekiah, and And of course, he was most likely in the womb when his father, the king, was killed. And as they fled away with the prophet Jeremiah, they were taken up to Ireland. And that is believed to be the final resting place and grave where Jeremiah is buried. Mulek eventually came on a boat to the Americas with a group of people, and they were known as the civilization of the Mulekites. Now, legend has it that Tia Tephi traveled through Spain on her way to Ireland. I have found Spain in my tree through this line. Galicia, Spain, to be exact. This is known as the Celtic region of Spain. There's that word, sounds like Gaelic. Well, just up a couple of generations in that line, this name stood out to me. Damal Mac Rothschild. Rothschild sounded a lot like Rothschild, so I looked it up and it means a red-haired people. Now, I talked all about this in my video about the origins of red hair, so I will have that linked down below. And of course, these royal bloodlines in my tree lead back to none other than the tribe of Judah, Judah ben Jacob. Jacob is Israel, so the royal line of Judah, son of Jacob, right through the bloodline of Joseph and Mary. And I believe at some point in just about everyone's tree, you should be able to trace back an ancient ancestor to this family. It was my search for the Wrighty family origins that led me to all of these discoveries. My family and I were able to do their work, which included some untouched royal names that were pretty old. It was almost as though they were reserved for our family. This particular family of Wrighties in New York surprisingly did not have any posterity. They didn't have any children. There was no one looking for them, no one looking to build their tree. I'm grateful I stumbled across their names so I could be the one to build that tree. I hope this has inspired you to go work on your own family tree. You just never know what you might learn about your family.